peace of God be with you this day.
One of my favorite entertainers is a blind piano player, singer named Gordon Moot. And if you ever get a chance to listen to Gordon Moot, in fact, I did one of his songs here several years ago, When Mercy Walks In. But he is a recording musician in Nashville and plays for all the greats. But this song that he does, since he can't see and was born blind, really touched my heart when he did it. But then as I really got into the words, I enjoy the song for what it says. So I hope you'll like it. I thought number one would always be me. Thought I could be what I wanted to be. Thought I could build on life's sinking sand, but I can't even walk without you holding my hand. I thought I could do a lot on my own. Thought I could make it all alone. Thought of myself as a mighty big man, but I can't even walk without you holding my hand. Lord, I can't even walk without you holding my hand. Mountains too high, valleys too wide, down on my knees I've learned to stand, and I can't even walk without you holding my hand. Think I'll make Jesus my all in all. When I'm in trouble, on His name I'll call. And if I don't trust Him, I'd be less than a man. Lord, I can't even walk without you holding my hand. Lord, I can't even walk without you holding my hand. Mountains too high, valleys too wide, down on my knees I've learned to stand, and I can't even walk without you holding my hand. No, I can't even walk without you holding my hand. How many of you remember David in the Old Testament? Everybody? Held in high esteem. It was very important that Jesus was a part of the lineage of David. Really, the story of David and Goliath, how he was chosen to be the king. A beautiful story about how he was picked, and he was short and ruddy but handsome, and his brothers were big and burly, and everyone thought they would be the chosen ones for sure. But David was king, the highest of the high, the most powerful of the most powerful. He had everything a man could want. But David saw a woman in his community, Bathsheba. And even though he had tons of wives, as they did back then, I don't know how, because I got one and it's about to kill me, But I'm just saying, No, I love you. But he had tons of wives, but he saw Bathsheba. She was beautiful apparently to him. He wanted her. So the problem was she was married to one of his very loyal soldiers, Uriah. But he wanted her bad. So what he did is he arranged for Uriah to be put on the front lines in a battle, and he was killed so he could have Bathsheba. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever worked for someone powerful. If you've ever worked for a superintendent, or you work for a principal, or you work for a manager of a store, or someone who owns a business, if your livelihood depends on how you get along with that person. And so nobody was telling the king that he'd done anything wrong. Their eyes were closed to it. And you see this every day with power. How people with power, folks are so afraid that they'll be hurt or that they won't get what they want, that they ignore the negative in somebody's life, particularly someone who has great influence over them. But David had in his midst the prophet Nathan. And he liked Nathan a lot. He knew that Nathan was a good and honest man. And when you see a good and honest man, there is something about him that's different. You know it. When you're in the presence of a good and honorable person, I can't describe it, but we know that we're in the presence of someone special. That's how I felt the first time I met Bob Shields. He was a FBI agent at that time and had his young family going, and I was at a school meeting where they had a public meeting, and the principal was up front talking, and I listened to this wonderful man who glowed with positive energy speak on behalf of the students, and in I don't remember what he talked about, but I remember being blown away as he stood up in public and spoke, and I thought, who is this guy? And I made it a point to get to know him. His son was in my brother's class, and so he was a chaperone on a trip that my brother took with his class to Florida. And Billy and I got to be chaperones, and we got to know he and Betty, and changed my life. Later, when Bob retired from the FBI, he went into the ministry and retired as a Methodist minister. You are in the presence of someone good and kind and honorable. And Nathan was that kind of man. And David allowed Nathan to tell him pretty much anything, but even Nathan knew not to go in and just get in his face. Because all the king has got to do, look what he did to Uriah. Look what he did to Bathsheba. He took what he wanted and had a man killed, an adulterer and a murderer, not someone that we would normally hold up as being of high esteem. But Nathan comes in, and David says, "Speak to me." So the Lord sent, this is from 2 Samuel 12. The Lord sent the prophet Nathan to David. Nathan went to him and he said, "There were two men who lived in the same town. One was rich and the other was poor. The rich man had many cattle and sheep, and while the poor man had only one lamb which he had bought. He took care of it, and it grew up in his home with his children. He would feed it some of his own food and let it drink from his cup, and he would hold a lamb in his lap. The lamb was like a daughter to it. One day a visitor arrived at the rich man's home, and the rich man didn't want to kill one of his own animals to feed and fix a meal for him. Instead, he took the lamb from the poor man and prepared a meal for his guest. The rich man who had everything took the lamb from the poor man, killed it, and fed it to his guests. David became very angry when he heard this story about the rich man, and he said, "I swear by the living God that the man who did this ought to die. For having done such a cruel thing, he must pay back 4 times as much as he took." David just slipped right into that king role of taking care of things and handing out justice. "You are that man," Nathan said. And if we were a fly on the wall in the room when that happened, I bet you could hear the air molecules hit the wall when Nathan said, "You are that man." And this is what the Lord God of Israel says to you, David. "I made you king of Israel. I rescued you from Saul. I gave you his kingdom. I gave you his wives. I made you king over Israel and Judea. And if this had not been enough, I would have given you twice as much." Why? Why then? David, why have you disobeyed my commands? Why did you do this evil thing? You had Uriah killed in battle. You let the Ammonites kill him, and then you took his wife. And David, hearing the truth, knowing that it was true, for that moment of justice in his own heart, he cried out, "I have sinned against the Lord." David was so blinded by what he wanted, he didn't see his own sin. So, my topic today is nothing personal. When someone says, "You're fired," now nothing personal. This is just business. It's personal. Isn't it? What is it when a large corporation is more concerned with their stockholders' profits than they are the employees? Now, you can be concerned about your profits and your employees, but when you're more concerned about your profits than you are your employees, that's personal. If you've worked somewhere for 35 years and suddenly they're letting you go, that's personal. What's personal here in Vanceboro? Well, a couple of examples that come to my mind, and I don't know your world like you do. I love people in your world. I mean, I do love me some Mike Swain. Now, I'm going to tell you, I've got a daughter-in-law, and I've told Mikey, if he decides to leave her, he's going to have to leave me too, because I'm keeping her. But I know the world that you're in and the people you care about from this wonderful family that we have here through Nisha, her mom and dad, and folks like Miss Nell passing away. That's personal. When you lose somebody you love. When Jeff Hill died tragically not so long ago, that's personal. That hurts. I mean, that's really somebody you know and love. Death is personal. When a friend hurts, whether it hurts you, whether they mean to or not, if it's innocent and they hurt you, say the wrong thing, do something that offends you, it hurts. It's personal. When you are hurting and no one notices, that's personal. I'd like to ask you a question about a local retail outlet and try to tie this to David. If you'll just give me a few minutes. How many of you love to go to Walmart? I know I do. I like to go. The closest Walmart that we have in Hatteras is 75 miles away. We live in Hatteras Village. You have to drive all the way up to Banks and then go to Nags Head and then to Kitty Hawk. And it's all day to go to Walmart to save 10 cents. It really is. It is all day. I mean, when I get home at night, I feel like I've been to the county fair. I am worn completely out. But Walmart stores came to town in my lifetime. There were no Walmart stores at one point in my life, and then suddenly they sprang up and they had lower prices and they had all this stuff. Oh my God, you could get everything there. It's just wonderful. And all the little mom and pop stores that were around couldn't compete. And the local businesses that had served the communities for years started falling away one at a time. Now, I heard on the news the other day, and this is what brought this sermon to my head, that in the Midwest, Walmart has examined their bottom line, and they're doing what corporate businesses do. They're examining where the profit is and where it isn't. And there are a lot of these Walmarts in small towns that are just not turning the profit. So they're closing them. They're laying off the people that work there. They're closing the Walmarts. But what's happened is they interviewed the people in the communities who no longer have the local hardware store. They no longer have the local bakery. They no longer have the local general store and the local grocery store, because those folks went out of business. Now, these folks were saying on the news, I've got to travel 70, 80 miles to go get groceries. So, who's to blame? It certainly isn't Walmart's fault. I mean, Walmart's just doing business. I mean, they came along and they created a product and we all loved it and we went after it. That's how capitalism works. Some people would say to the local mom and pops, they'd say, hey, if you want to stay in there, you need to compete. But if you and your wife have owned the store for 60 years, you don't have connections in China to get things at the lowest price. So you're caught. You can't offer it at so much lower. So who is putting the mom and pop stores out of business? I am. You are. We are. Because rather than pay $1.50 in our little local store, we'd rather pay $1.45 at Walmart. And without meaning to, without any ill intention, we destroyed the fabric of many of the small towns. It was nothing but good business practice. I mean, you just get the best price you can. What's wrong with that? But it is an unintentional kind of greed that we're willing, not knowing it, but willing to let the mom and pops die rather than spend a little more there. Nothing personal. In the village where I live, gas prices are high. I mean, when you're in Nags Head, I don't know what I paid for gas here the other day, but it was just a little over $2 down here and some change, whatever it was. Well, when you get to Nags Head, it's gone up another 15 cents, and when you get down to where I live, it's 35, 40 cents more a gallon. And the folks who sold the gas down there, they are not a part, the individual station owners. We don't have any BP station down there. We have local owners. They can't get their gas at the price that the BP station can get it in Nags Head. In fact, they're paying about what I would pay in Nags Head. So they sell their gas for more. So what do all the people in the island do? What do you think we do? We wait till we go to Nag's Head, we gas up, because we don't want to pay 15 cents more at home. We end up saving maybe $3, maybe $5, depending on the size of vehicle you've got. And what has happened now is those store owners are falling off. And one of my best friends who owns a station for other reasons, but this is a part of it too. He was glad to not have the aggravation of gas anymore, because everybody went to him and said, if you lower your price, I'd buy gas from you. He had it as low as he could get it. Nothing personal. There's a bakery in Hatteras that opened up. We hadn't had a bakery there in a long time. We used to have everything. We had a post office. We had 3 grocery stores. And they were all known by the people's names who had them. It was Dolph's and Anders and, that kind of thing. All of them had the names of the people who owned them. And you could get anything from it. You could have meat cut. Anything. None of that now. There's 1 or 2 left within driving distance, 12, 15-mile driving distance of where I live. We had a little bakery open up, and that bakery was open, and everybody said, isn't it great we have a bakery? And I didn't go in it for 6 months. And I didn't go in it because I'm fat. And I knew if I went in it, I'd want everything in there. But then I realized that I was killing them. That if they were trying to have a bakery, and I want us to have a bakery in Hatteras, because one time out of the year I want to get something, I'd love to have fresh bakery. But they're not going to survive on me going in one time. And when there's a food line in Avon, which is 20 miles away, selling things in the price range of what the food lines are here, why on earth would you pay 50 cents more for a gallon of milk right there in your village? So what's happened to that store right there in the village? It's dying. Now, my aunt lived her whole life working in one of those little general stores. Her whole life. And when she became demented and her thinking wasn't clear, I went to the manager of the store, this little red and white that she'd worked in all her life. Maybe you got stores here in town that you can relate this to. And I told the manager, I said, you don't have to keep my aunt on, because I know she's not doing anything but a burden to you. He said, she was here before I was born. And as long as she wants to come here, I'm going to keep her here. And when she gets so confused she can't put produce up, I'm going to put a chair in my office and let her sit there. Don't you wish you lived in a place where people did that? But that's gone. Nothing personal. Don't be fooled by what we think doesn't hurt anyone. Because sometimes the unintentional things that we do are hurting folks and are causing great harm. Matthew 26, Jesus said to them, this very night, all of you will run away and leave me. For the scripture says, God will kill the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I'm raised to life, I will go to Galilee ahead of you. Peter spoke up and said to Jesus, I will never leave you, even though the rest do. You can count on me, Jesus. And Jesus turned to Peter and he said, I tell you what, pal, before the rooster crows tonight, you'll say 3 times that you don't even know me. And Peter answered, and I'm sure we were a fly on the wall again. He didn't answer in a calm voice. I bet he kind of got back at Jesus, kind of got in his face and said, let me tell you something. I will never say that. Even if I have to die with you, 35. Even if I have to die with you. And all the other disciples said the same thing. And Jesus said, Simon, Simon, this is in Luke 22 now, same activity, same thing playing out here with Jesus and Peter. Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat, but I prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail, and when you have turned back, strengthen the others. But he replied, Lord, I am ready to go with you to prison and to death. Jesus answered, I tell you, Peter, before the rooster crows today, you'll deny me 3 times. Now, what Peter did eventually was he denied him. And he was in that courtyard scared to death. Here is the guy that he was convinced and knew in his heart was God on earth, the Messiah, the King, and had seen him raise people from the dead. He had seen him touch people's eyes and let them see, deaf that could hear. He had seen him feed a multitude with a few fish and loaves of bread. He'd seen that firsthand. So he knew the power that this man Jesus had. He was in the boat with him when he calmed the sea. He walked on the water with him a little bit. But that same guy, at that moment in the courtyard, when they had Jesus inside and the soldiers and the guards for the temple were slapping him and spitting on him, he got scared. I don't know but what I'd have done the same thing. And they said, you're with him, aren't you? He said, no, I don't even know the guy. Now this is within a few hours of him saying, I will die for you. You know, I was in counseling for years. And I was always interested to accidentally fall into marriage counseling situations. It's not what I was an educational counselor, but when you are counseling people, things come into the equation. And I always found it interesting when somebody said that had been married for 20 years and now they were leaving, having an affair, going somewhere else. They'd say, you know, I don't think I ever really loved her. I said, well, who in the world pushed you down the aisle? You stood in front of everybody you knew. You stood in front of God and you said, I love this woman for the rest of my life. Ain't that what we do? But when it gets tough, you're in the courtyard, somebody's getting whipped, and you say, I'm going to cover my own self here. I don't know the man. 3 times. And Mike, I'm sure you know because I don't. Mikey is a much more of a scholar of the Bible, but on the 3rd time in one of these, Jesus turned and looked at him. Do you know which book that was in? I can't think off the top of my head, but can you imagine that cold feeling? That you're standing there, you deny him the 3rd time, and as you look over that way, he turns and looks right through your soul. And what did Peter do then? He ran away and he wept. Nothing personal, Jesus. Just trying to make it. Nothing personal. What Peter did was cowardly. He surprised and disappointed himself by failing to be strong. And we've done that. Peter saw the error of his ways up. He did. He went away and got to thinking about it, and he got himself straight, and he went back. King David saw the error of his ways. But you know, both of them paid a tremendous emotional price for what they did. I mean, God will forgive you. You can get forgiveness. But once you put the train on the track, you're gonna run by some stations that are not going to be fun. You can't undo. Once you slap somebody, I had a guy come to me one time, and he was telling me, he said, my wife thinks I'm having an affair. I said, are you having an affair? He said, no, she's crazy. I'm not having it. I said, so what's your relationship with this other woman? He said, oh, well, we're real good friends. We're real good friends. I said, let me just ask you something. Have you seen her in her underwear? Because if you've seen her in her underwear, there ain't no going back. You've already moved to a place where you cannot recover. There is a point in every decision that we make where you're at a point of decision that you cannot recover without being wounded. And David was wounded. Peter was wounded in a different way, but Peter was wounded. And human beings who forsake or who don't do for others or who walk by an empty store that they didn't shop at because they'd rather spend the gas money to go to town, I'm guilty. I'm telling you, I'm standing in front of you as one of the guilty ones. It's not their fault they're closed. It's my fault they're closed. Amen. So, Peter saw the error of his ways. David saw the error of his ways. And if we're lucky enough to see the error of our ways, we can change things. I was in a board meeting years ago. Remember when tobacco was the cash crop here? And all the tobacco farmers, understandably, that's their life. Many of these tobacco farms have been handed down from generation to generation. I mean, it's what we did. You know, we raised tobacco here in Craven County. But it was the beginning of all of the furor about tobacco in schools and in places of business, and should you be smoking around other people. I happened to be at a board meeting where a local good man, tobacco farmer, his livelihood depended on it, spoke to the group as they were debating whether or not to make it a closed campus out to tobacco. No tobacco-free campus. No tobacco on campus. And this wonderful person was defending tobacco being available. And he said, it's your choice. It's a voluntary thing. You don't have to smoke. It's not like I'm making people smoke. And he was so emotional that he cried as he was talking. I mean, tears were and rolled down his cheek. And I remember seeing him and thinking, he really feels strongly about this whole world is disappearing. And then about 6 months later, this same individual came to me and said, I need your help. Caught my son smoking. Would you go talk to him? It's different when it's your young'un. It's different when it's your wife. It's different when it's your family that owns the store. That's right. It's different when you're the one that's getting hurt. It's personal. And you can say nothing personal all day long. It don't change it. It's personal. There are lots of Davids and Peters out there. It got personal for David and Peter, and they repented, but it took time. And we have to have patience with our brothers and sisters. We have to understand where they're coming from, particularly when their livelihood is involved in it. But we have to have hope also that the Davids and the Peters are worth the trouble and that they will eventually see what they're doing. And I know because I am one of them. It's personal when someone threatens your livelihood. It's personal when someone hurts someone you care about. It's personal when somebody mocks or puts down your opinion. And in this day and time now, we've become so divided about political opinion that I can't stand to go on Facebook because the two sides call each other horrific names. I mean, the conservative and the liberal. If you're a liberal, then conservatives are crazy. If you're a conservative, the liberals are nuts. I mean, and that's what it's evolved down to. And I'm going to tell you, some of us are liberals and some of us are conservatives. And we got a right to our opinion, whatever it is. You got a right to yours and I got a right to mine. I don't have a right to demean you. I don't have a right. I don't remember in the Bible any exceptions to love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and to love your neighbor. It doesn't say your liberal neighbor. It doesn't say your conservative neighbor. It says your neighbor as yourself. Now, I'm going to tell you, this, I almost said a bad word. I did say one at Little Grove Church down in Frisco. I said a bad word, and I was about halfway through the sermon. I realized I'd said it, and I said, did I just say what I think I said? And they all said, oh, yeah. I said, well, please don't tell the preacher. I won't ever be able to get back up here again. But the fact is, when we demean someone else, we're demeaning ourselves. Now, if you don't believe that these two sides can get together, then you have never been married or had children. Because if you've been married or had children, you know you can love somebody that you'd love to kill and strangle because their opinion is so different from yours. If you love somebody, you will take their difference and you'll feed them and you'll love them. And when they give you a chance, you'll try to nudge them the right way or what you think the right way is. But you don't stop loving somebody because you don't agree with them.
That's right.
It's personal when someone cares more about winning than they do about you. I told Buddy yesterday, little buddy, my little buddy that I love. I told him yesterday, I don't even remember the score of your game. That's how bad I am. But I told you what I do remember. When the little fella fell over you from the other team, you helped him up. Good. I do remember you patting your teammates on the back when they did good. Good. That's what warms my heart. I don't care whether you win or not. I'd like you to win if you want to win. But where you really win is when you treat people decent like that. And that's rare to see in this day and time when coaches are throwing chairs across the... And every time I use that example, somebody will say, yeah, but he's the winningest coach. I don't care. You spit on my mama, you spit on my mama. It don't make no difference to me whether you had a cold or not. It is personal when someone takes away our loved one's freedom by encouraging them to drink or do drugs or do something that would harm them. It's personal when somebody prays for you. It's personal when somebody forgives you. It's personal when somebody attends a funeral to support you. It's personal when somebody feeds you. It's personal when somebody treats your loved one with respect. It's personal when somebody is loyal to you. And it's personal when somebody helps you when you're in need. And it's personal when somebody loves you. And it's personal when somebody helps you free yourself from some kind of slavery or addiction that you're caught up in. Or cares for you when nobody else does. And they put a label on you and they've discounted you. Now, all this dialogue about bill, HR, whatever it is, going to the bathroom, forget it. Whoever these souls are that live in these bodies, they are sons of Christ. Whether they know it or not, whether you know it or not, they are. They are as valuable in the family of God as any of us. So as we have our rhetoric about it, what should or shouldn't be, don't forget to love folks. And I tell you what's personal is when somebody does for somebody that I love. Now, I love y'all because you love Mikey. And he loves y'all. But y'all love Mikey, which makes me love you. That's my baby. That's my boy. And I love him. And you're kind to him. You're good to him. And I thank you for that. And it's personal. I appreciate that. It takes courage to get personal in this day and time. Because when we get close, we start keeping score. And you know what happens? Sadly, when we do get close and personal with people, we start counting favors. Well, I did this for him. At least he could do is do this for me. Fair is fair. If I'm kind to him or her, then I'm shocked and offended if she's not kind to me. After all, fair is fair. Seems like I remember Jesus being confronted by Peter, who wanted him to say, is it okay now for me to condemn this person? And he said, forgive him. How many times should I forgive him? 7? And Jesus said what?
7 times 7.
That's right, 7 times 70. And I don't think he meant do the math. I think he said, hey, a lot more than that. Love doesn't keep score. How many people desperately want to believe and trust in God, but they're just afraid to jump in, afraid to get personal with God. If I do, what will God want me to do? And what will I have to give up if I get personal with God? Now, if you're a parent, it's personal. Look what you have to do. You have to supply shelter, food, health care, guidance, education. How many thousands of dollars does it take to raise a child today? So if you're going to have a child, it's going to get real personal. And if you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, it gets personal because you have to pay attention to somebody who thinks different than you. You have to do things they like to do. You have to go where they want to go sometimes. You have to listen to music you don't particularly care for that they like. And you have to act interested. And because you love them, you are kind of interested in what they like and don't like. It's a lot of work. And if you want to have a friend, it gets personal because you have to spend time with them. You have to help them out when they're in need. You got to help them move. You got to listen to them when they got marital problems. You got to support them when they lose a loved one. You got to encourage them when they're down or sick. Look out for their family as if it was your family, if they're your real, true friend. It's a lot of work to have a friend. And when you have a family, it gets personal. Because you got to care for each other, support each other, make sure everybody has what they need. Be there for each other. When you win, be there for each other when you lose. I saw on the book club stuff that I get on the internet the other day. There's a place called BookBub, and they'll show you all these books that are a reduced price. And there was a book written by a husband and wife whose child had killed 3 people, murdered them savagely. And they were having to live with the repercussions of a son that killed 3 people. So if they killed 3 people, each one of those 3 people had parents and friends and family and associates. So that they were hated. And they wrote a book about living with that. And I thought, we got a prison right over here. It's chock full of somebody's young'uns. Every one of them were born to a mom and a dad, to somebody. Somebody had to come together for them to be there. And they may have made horrific mistakes in their life, but they are somebody's loved ones. If you're going to be a member of a family, it ain't easy when everybody's getting straight A's and everything's going right and everybody looks pretty. It's a piece of cake. But it ain't ever going to be just that way. Getting personal is the foundation of real love, and love comes with responsibility, and you cannot have real love and be a free bird. There is no way. Alone means no commitments, no responsibilities. When Billy had her cancer, 15 years ago, and then she had all this damage to her intestines as a result of it. She was in the hospital, had the surgery, had the radiation, had the treatments, and then was beginning to have the repercussions that we're still living with now. She was on 4th floor over at East Carolina in the hospital. The ECU Leo Jenkins Cancer Institute then, was one of our doctors was there. She was there for a month. I was so mad with God. I mean, she never smoked. She never drank. She never did anything. She was nice. I'm the one that would do obscene things in public and embarrass her. And I smoked, and while I never drank, but I did things that was deserving. If somebody between the two of us should have gotten a hit, it should have been me. Now, Lord, I don't want a hit. I'm just want to make sure you understand that. But if it was between me and her, she shouldn't have gotten it. I was mad. I was mad with God. And I didn't want to pray to him, because if I prayed to him, he didn't answer me, I'd be even madder at him. And so I didn't have nothing to do with it. That whole month we were up there, I'm battling this internally. And we had a new preacher, Danny Allen, who came to Centenary Methodist, and he had never met us, and he went to visit us at the hospital, first time we ever met him. I didn't know he had lost his wife to cancer. And so he came in and we were visiting, I was being as cordial as I could be to be as mad as I was. And he said, I lost my wife to cancer. I said, I did not know that. Got my attention. He said, yeah. He said, and I stood on her grave and I cursed God. And he said, and as I walked to my car, a peace came over me. And this thought came in my head that was foreign from my heart that said, I loved her before you did. And I know what's best for her. And you're going to be all right. She's definitely all right. He said, and I was okay after that. I was still sad and had to raise his, still hurt. But he was at peace. That stuck in my head. So I went down to the bathroom at the end of the hall one night about 7 o'clock, and me and God had a talk. And I told him that I didn't appreciate what he was doing. I didn't think it was a good idea. But I didn't believe I could live without him. And so if I've got to put up with your way, I'll do it. I don't like it, but I'll do it. Because I can't do it alone. And you can't either. I'm telling you, you can't do it alone. That's why that prison is chock full of folk. You can't do it alone. You got to get personal. You got to have a relationship with God. And when you do, when you sacrifice and you pay the price, and you will, you're going to be up nights when things don't go well. And you're going to pay a little more at a friend's shop. But what you'll receive in the end is something I can't even explain to you. There's that peace that Danny Allen talked about. Bryan Adams wrote a song, When You Love Someone. It was in the movie Hope Floats, I think. It's where I first heard it. But the lyrics to the song are, when you love someone, you'll do anything. You'll do all the crazy things that you can't explain. You'll shoot the moon, put out the sun when you love someone. And when you love Jesus, it's personal. Now, let me explain something to you, and I'm done. We tend, if we were starving and a big truck came up and was loaded with food, nutrition for us, human beings would worship the truck rather than think about the nutrition that's inside the truck. And a lot of times, that's what happens to us Christians. We get so hung up on saying, you have to believe on Jesus, you have to have Jesus, it's Jesus, Jesus. Jesus was the transmitter of the plan. The plan to love God, the Creator, to love your neighbor as you love yourself. The message of Jesus, the Sermon on the Mount, what he said to Peter, what he said to Pilate. You've got no power over me. If you worship his message, you will then absolutely adore and love him. But it's not, without the message, it's nothing. You're an empty Christian without the message. And you can't walk by the store that your buddy owns and not go in and pay $12 for an ice cream cone. If you love it, you got to go in and spend the $12. You got to do it if you love it. And when your best friend's wife dies, you got to go over there. You can't just send them an email. If you love somebody, it's personal. Now, I tell you where you can get all the information you need on this, and it is not full of my crazy dialogue and horrible examples. It's clean and clear, and it's in the Bible. And you'll read it again and again and again, and it'll be a new book every time you read it. Hebrews 4:12 through 13. The Word of God is alive and active, sharper than any double-edged sword. It cuts all the way through to where the soul and the spirit meet, to where joints and marrow come together. It judges the desires and thoughts of the heart. There is nothing that can be hidden from God. Everything in all creation is exposed and lies open before His eyes, and it is to Him that we must all give account of ourselves. And the last thing that I want to leave you with, there's a light that glows by the front door. Don't forget the keys under the mat. When childhood stars shine, always stay humble and kind. Go to church 'cause your mama says to. Visit Grandpa every chance that you can. It won't be a waste of time. And always stay humble and kind. Hold the door, say please, say thank you. And don't steal, don't cheat, don't lie. I know you've got mountains to climb, but always stay humble and kind. When the dreams you're dreaming come to you, when the work you put into realize, let yourself feel the pride, but always stay humble and kind. Don't expect a free ride from no one. Don't hold a grudge or a chip, and here's why. Bitterness will keep you from flying. Always stay humble and kind. Know the difference between being with someone and being with someone you love. I love you ain't no pickup line. Always stay humble and kind. Hold the door, say please, say thank you. And don't steal, don't cheat, don't lie. I know you've got mountains to climb. Always stay humble and kind. When those dreams you're dreaming come to you, when the work you put in realize, let yourself feel pride, but always stay humble and kind. When it's hot, eat a root beer popsicle. Shut off the AC, roll the windows down. Let the summer sun shine, but always stay humble and kind. Don't take for granted the love this life gives you. When you get where you're going, don't forget, turn back around. Help the next one in line. Always stay humble and kind. Hold the door, say please, say thank you. And don't steal, don't cheat, don't lie. I know you've got mountains to climb. Always stay humble and kind. When the dreams you're dreaming come to you, when the work you put in realize, let yourself feel pride, but always stay humble and kind.
Let yourself feel the pride, but always stay humble and kind.